everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sherwood Shakeup. I'm your host, Matt Weinglass. Happy March, everyone. And we are just so excited about today's episode. We have a very special guest coming on with us in a little bit. We're going to be talking about writing, screenwriting, the screenwriting process, and the journey of the writer. So for all you writers out there, actors, directors, anybody interested in the storytelling process, this is where it begins, right? From the pen to the paper, and then it's on to the process of filmmaking. So we'll be getting to that shortly. But for right now, let's go ahead and quickly, I would love to check in with our correspondent, Lizette Santiago. Lizette.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
I just noticed that you have a little Buddha in the background there.
I do have a little Buddha right back there, right between two very important books. We have the Barefoot Spirit next to it on the left, and we got the Kobe Bryant book on the
I
right.
have no idea why people even have them. Like,
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Did you take a look at this on a previous show and said I got to go be like Matt now and get a
Nope,
no?
nope.
You sure?
I just have mine sitting.
Okay.
See, mine, you can't see it though because it's actually on my desk, but it's like literally right next to me. So
This is I think they call this kismet. Is that the word? I don't know. That's
yeah.
we're aligned. We're
synchronicity.
something is
Maybe?
yeah. Or yes, exactly. We are so something's in the air, and I think we're feeling it for March. I think this month, I don't know about you, but I woke up to this morning and I was excited. It was the first of the month, but I felt extra excited. I don't know why this month. It feels like something is brewing in the air. Something cool. It feels good.
I agree with you. I think February was a little difficult for everyone. I feel like everyone was going through a really we were all on a roller coaster, but we kind of got stuck at the top, and now I think we're like back down and coming back up. So
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
feel like it's a fresh new start in March.
Yeah.
And speaking of a fresh new start in March, and is it raining Sherwood rain? Clouds, this storm, Sherwood storm this month because
When it rains, it pours, but we're saying that in a good way because things always come in threes, right? And I think we're feeling the good this good, like you call it, a Sherwood storm of goodness is coming through. And
yes.
So yes,
and I heard through the grapevine, and this is so exciting for me personally because I love, though I'm not good at it myself, but I love comedy, stand-up comedy and all that stuff. And I heard through the grapevine there's a comedy show coming.
Yes. There is a comedy show coming. It's Sherwood's first comedy show we're producing, and we're doing it in a really amazing space with some amazing people. It's coming on March 19th at the Pineapple Hill bar up in Sherman Oaks, and it's a fantastic spot. It's an outdoor spot. The people putting this together with us, they're incredible people, and we're getting some really phenomenal comics on the bill right now. Right now we have Jamie Kennedy headlining this thing.
What?
Yes.
Jamie Kennedy. We worked on a show years ago, but
yes,
wow, that's awesome.
Jamie's is on. He's coming to Sherman Oaks with us on the 19th of March, and we're putting out the information for you guys tomorrow. Literally, we're putting an email blast out, so you guys are going to have the first to get tickets because it's going live tomorrow. And so you guys will be the first. I want to make sure the Sherwood community, you guys are the first to have access to these tickets. And so they will be going live tomorrow. We'll send the email blast out. If you guys are not on our email list, please go to sherwoodplayers.com like today. Like, not, you don't have to do it this second. Like, watch the show, but don't forget, go to sherwoodplayers.com. There's an email sign up right on the home page, and we'll plug you in, and you will get the information for this comedy show on the 19th.
Absolutely. That's amazing, Matt. Kudos.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So everyone, please check it out because this is fun. Comedy, we all need it with everything going on in the world. We all need comedy in our lives. So this is going to be something really fun.
And I should mention, I said Jamie Kennedy's headlining. We also have the hilarious Bill Devlin is also on the headliner for us with us. So I just wanted to throw that out as well so people know Jamie Kennedy, Bill Devlin. And we have some other comics that we'll be announcing soon leading up to the event. So those aren't the only two. So it's going to be a really packed event of a lot of cool talent that we're all going to be under the same roof in a really cool outside space. So
Amazing. And one more time, Matt, when's the date of the actual event, just so that everyone's aware?
Saturday, March 19th
March
at
19th.
8 p.m. Write it down now. And again, you'll get the email blast tomorrow. You'll be first to get tickets before they're going to go fast. They're going to go really fast because it's a one-time deal. This is it. It's a one-time show. So.
And on that note, you mentioned something about fun. I had the opportunity of having a blast and having fun when I did a table reading of Crash with you. And I
Oh,
heard that there's
yes.
something in the making.
Yes. You remember the table reading. I mean,
Of course I
was
did.
that our little baby called Crash, which is it's a story about a superhero who stops people from texting and driving. So it's a cause-driven project to, fight against distracted driving, but we're doing it with a superhero and it's animation. So we've been developing this, and like you're referencing a read through one. We did that a while back, and from that point, we have developed these characters, developed these episodes, and we have 2 full seasons worth of content now of Crash and this whole universe of characters, sidekicks, super villains, but all trying to, Crash is just trying to do good in the world, and that's the setup for this this new universe of Crash that we're going to introduce to people. The good news, Lizette, we just found out is that the first season, Crash season 1 of the animated series, is going to be going public, our world premiere. It'll be starting April 1st. It'll be streaming on Genre TV, which is free on Roku. So if you have Roku, you can access our animated show starting April 1st. And that'll be on Genre TV, free on Roku, as you guys see below. So stay tuned. Again, be on our email blast because we will give you more specifics on what to look for. So remind you to tune in April 1st. And I should add this too, Lizette, and we didn't know this. This part we did not know, and we were made aware. Did you know that April is officially now the month that is Distracted Driving Awareness Month? Did you know that?
No idea. I had no idea.
So
Wow.
we're doing this for a good cause, and we're doing it the first day, April 1st. We'll start off Distracted Driving Awareness Month on a good note. So just throwing that out there.
And what makes Crash unique, I don't know if our viewers know this too. I think you might have, talked about it a little bit, Matt, but the technology is a good, is a very important thing in the series Crash, because we're dealing with technology and iPhones and the Uber, like it's just such a fun scripted project that I'm so happy that you got it streaming on Roku, because that's amazing, especially during Driver Awareness Month, because there were so many things in that really hit home for me and are like, I think everyone will get it too. So especially our youngins, millennials.
We appreciate that you saying that, and we have gotten some amazing feedback from the community, and I think it's time we put it out there. It's time we stop, kind of throwing it off each other, bouncing it off each other, and we start saying, it's time to put this thing out in the world. So we're finally doing it, April 1st.
So kudos on that, Matt. Kudos.
Yeah.
And then there's one more thing too. My goodness, like I told you, it's like a Sherwood storm, but in a good way. The director's showcase coming up too.
So the director's course and the showcase, we are looking to lock this in very, very soon. It's going to be at the Complex Hollywood, and we're going to be announcing dates. Also, get on our email blast because you'll be first to find out. We're only taking 6 directing students, and we're going to take some actors in as well. We're going to need about 8 to 10 actors, and that's it. So if you are a director and you're a aspiring director, or even an experienced director, you're looking to, kind of brush up on your craft, contact us. You can literally go to our website, sherwoodplayers.com, and you can contact us right there. And we will get in touch with you and talk to you, because this is coming up very soon. So we're going to start doing interviews for potential directing students very soon. So that's all I'm going to say about that right now, because we'll have more information later. But again, that's it. Yeah, the Sherwood storm, the perfect storm is coming for March.
The perfect Sherwood storm. Love it. Matt, that's amazing stuff. Kudos. I hope everyone takes these opportunities, because all 3 of them are amazing. So I'm proud of it. And yeah, Matt, anything else on your end?
No, I think this is it for now. It's been awesome saying hi, Lizette. Thanks for
Yes.
taking the time to check in with us.
And I'm headed
And
now too. I don't know if people know, to a film festival going on in Hollywood that's making a
oh,
splash.
yes, that's right. Tell us really quick what's going on.
Sure, it's in Hollywood at the Chinese Theater. It's the Golden State Film Festival. Please check it out if you have a moment. Though Sherwood is not part of it yet, we have a lot of industry people who I know through Sherwood that are going to be there. A lot of
Oh, incredible.
filmmakers, a lot of parties, a lot of like, things happening there. So if you have a chance, go visit it. It's happening. It started Monday, but it's going on, I believe, to the end of this week. So yeah, and it's a little bit crazy down there, but in a fun way. So check it out. You'll probably bump into a lot of Sherwood players, members, and I'm going to be there myself too.
Oh, excellent. Well, yeah, have a great time, Lizette, and take lots of pictures and videos and share with us. And yeah,
Absolutely.
have a great time. That's awesome.
Absolutely. All
Okay.
right. See you later.
Take it easy, Lizette. We'll talk to you next time. Okay, that was Lizette. She's heading off to the Chinese Theater right now, and we're moving on with the rest of the show. But first, I just want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the channel, and click the bell notifications for reminders when we go live again. And we will be back next Tuesday, same time, with another episode. Now, let's get back on track for today's episode. We have a very special guest. He's an old friend of ours and a professional colleague. He's a professional screenwriter and teacher, and a former activist or current activist that has worked in the labor movement for several years. And we're going to introduce him right now. Please welcome to the show, TJ Alex.
Hello.
Hey, TJ. How's it going?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking time to be on the show with us on the Sherwood Shakeup. I would just like for people listening right now live, or people that are listening to it on a replay, I just want to first start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about your background. And I knew you started in the labor movement, and how you went from that to writing, and how did you what was that process like to you? And just give us kind of a little background.
Well, my background with the labor movement actually kind of starts with what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is Confessions of a Union Buster. And it started about 2003 or so, maybe 2002. I was working at a warehouse, and I was just driving forklifts and that sort of thing. And unions were always trying to come in and get into the building. And I'm a Texan, and in Texas, unions don't have an easy time. And all I knew about unions was what I had been told my whole life. And so I didn't pay them any attention. They were always passing out leaflets and stuff. The union was trying to get in. Management, of course, was daily passing out their own leaflets, trying to stop them from coming in. I really didn't care either way. But one day, management passed out a leaflet, and it had a story on it where basically they quoted from a newspaper article, and they kind of gave information on where you could read the article yourself. So I went online and I found the article, and it turned out that it was a pro-union article, and they had taken a piece of a sentence, a few words actually, completely out of context, and used it in an anti-union way. And that really kind of made me angry. And so I started researching more about unions, and I discovered this book out of nowhere, Confessions of a Union Buster. And I read it from cover to cover, discovered that everything in this book was exactly what I was seeing happening at this workplace that I was currently working. And suddenly I realized I had a passion, and a new angle on life. I realized what I needed to be doing. Long story short, I ended up going to the East Coast, looking for union work, all based on this book, that I just kind of found out of nowhere, just to completely change my life. I moved to the East Coast. That's where you and I met on a presidential campaign in 2004.
That's right.
After that by the way, we were trying to get Bush out of office, right? And,
that's right.
And for anybody who's kind of on the edge, we lost that campaign. If you're kind of curious how that went for us, that's how it ended. But
yes, It was a sad time. I remember because we worked so hard on that one together, Troy. Yes,
Yeah.
and we
But anyway,
we had we had a goal that didn't get completed, and it's always hard when you don't make it to that goal line. But yeah.
I immediately went from there and ended up working for one of the largest unions in New York City, and lived there for a few years working for them. And then I ended up moving back here, married my college sweetheart, had a few kids, all that sort of thing. And then time kind of went on. But it was just about a year and a half ago or so that I thought about Confessions of a Union Buster. And for some reason, I was wanting to look something up in that book. And so I went to find it on my shelf and I couldn't find it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to order another copy. And I get online and I see that it's not for sale anymore new. They don't print it anymore. The only way to get it is to pay like $60 for a used copy. And I just didn't feel very good about that. So this was a book that changed my life, and it wasn't available to the public. And so I took it upon myself. I kind of published my own books here and there through my own press. And so I tried to reach out to the author, Marty Levitt, only to discover he had passed away in 2004. So I reached out to the co-author and asked her, "Can I print your book for you?" And she said, "Of course." We worked out a deal so that I could print her book. She wasn't making any money off of it anyway because it was completely, not selling any copies. It was hadn't sold anything in 15 years. It had been out of print for 15 years. And so, what did she have to lose by trusting me to print it for her? And then while we were negotiating that, out of nowhere, she mentions, "Oh, by the way, back when this book first came out, Ed Asner tried to publish it. I'm not publish it. He tried to turn it into a film." And suddenly my wheels start churning because I like to dabble in screenwriting. And I happen to know a guy who knew Ed Asner, and you and I hadn't talked in a long time at that point, but I'd kept up with you online. And so I reached out to you and told you about this book that I now had the rights to, that Ed Asner once wanted to make into a film. And once I told you what the content of the book was, I knew you were on board with it. You reached out to Ed, and Ed was still interested in making this into a movie. So he signed on to it as an executive producer. And that's kind of how all this got started. And
yeah. But the thing, the most important part of that whole story isn't just aligning everyone. I mean, what you did, that's pretty phenomenal, kind of getting everyone together. Because you got me to get Ed. We all got together. We said, let's do this. But you still had to write the screenplay.
Yeah, I remember.
And, that hadn't happened yet. So
yeah, that had not happened yet. I hadn't even because and you and I kind of had a discussion about it when Ed first signed on to it. I remember you telling me, "Now I got to try to find a screenwriter, to attach to this thing." And I said, I kind of held up my hand. Here, let me take a shot at this.
Well, I have to say, I appreciate your boldness at that moment and your conviction. And that came from somewhere. And this is why, today's episode, we are calling it the writer's process and journey. The journey part is important. The process is important, just as important. But within all that, there's something I think that kind of ties it all together. And it's kind of vision. And the vision you had kind of took you through these stages where I think a lot of people would say, how the hell would you pull something like that off? But I think it's because you had a very clear objective, and that was I want to get this story told the best way it can be told. And that's from what I'm hearing from your backstory and what you've told us, that was your passion to get into to union work in the first place, was that you wanted to do right for people. So it was like this almost a sense of justice that you wanted to kind of bring to the table in telling the story, and so people know the truth, right? That's a great vision to have when you're telling a story.
Well,
right?
I mean, you have to consider the fact, I just told you how important this book was in my life and how it completely changed my life and sent me in a whole new direction.
Right.
So making sure that the story was told the right way was very important to me.
Well, let's stay on Union Buster for a little bit, and then I want to get into some other, the writer's process in general. But right now, just what I'd like you, can you explain a little bit about how you're able to take this book? You had it just recently come out again as a new edition, the Activist
The
edition,
new Activist edition,
which is incredible. But that original story, that's not, you weren't part of the original story. So how do you as a screenwriter, so like, I mean, maybe we're jumping ahead a little here, but I would love to know the process you went through when you took that book and you said, let me take this and tell it in a way where it's going to be seen on screen the best it can be seen on screen. Because as for what I know, you did not tell it the way it was written in the book. You're basically focusing on a part that would be more cinematic and therefore more effective to a moviegoer audience. How do you make that determination through that process?
Well, I mean, it certainly wasn't easy. And, you know, you and I, before we had the finished script, you know, we had talked back and forth quite a bit about how this story should be told. And I mean, I had several different outlines that I went through. The first one was kind of exactly what you would expect, which is the book takes place over a 20-year period. And so I kind of wrote an outline that takes everybody through that process. And you get to see him over an entire period of the course of his entire career as a union buster. And that's how we kind of started it out there. But then that was a very big story to tell, right? And so you just didn't have enough screen time to tell something like that.
Yeah.
And so at one point we had an outline that focused almost entirely on the relationship with his wife. And it was almost like this love story kind of thing, because his wife is a big part of this story. Mm-hmm. Throughout his 20-year career, she's always there. He's always talking about her. And so I kind of outlined something for that direction. That didn't work. And finally, I realized that the best way to tell this story, instead of covering 20 years worth of anti-union campaigns, let's focus in on one campaign.
Yeah.
One probably what we are saying is his last campaign, the one where he realizes all the horrors that he's done in his career. And that's where we focused it. And once you know what you're doing, then it's just a matter of, you know, plugging it in, you know, with the usual process.
Well, again, I have to applaud the process that you went through as the writer's process through this project, Confessions of a Union Buster, and you were able to get this team together. We do have an incredible producer, our own Randy Turow, who's come on to produce. Ed Asner, as we all know, unfortunately, he did pass away later at the end of last year, and that was very sad for us. We were very good friends. He was friends with our Sherwood community, but the silver lining there, or the good news that comes out of that, is that his family has completely backed this project after he personally had backed it, and he actually even shot a little 1-minute video for us saying
yeah.
Please. What was that? What were those words? He said, please, while I'm still young, help me get this movie made, right?
And if you remember, I wrote that commercial, right? So I mean, I felt good just to have, you know, the great Ed Asner saying something that I wrote for him to say.
He said your words right off the page, and he looked in the camera and he said the words, and it was incredible. And now we've taken that momentum, and now we're going to be making this film. We plan to go into pre-production soon on the film Confessions of a Union Buster, and we'll probably be doing another episode on that film and the filmmaking process as we go through it. So we're excited about that. For now, let's switch gears again. I want to go back to you as a writer, TJ. I just want to talk about your process of when did you get to that place where you realize I want to focus on screenwriting, versus I know you also have dabbled in teaching screenwriting. So tell me about, let's hear some about that process of where you found your calling and how that shaped you, who you are today as a writer.
Well, when I found myself living in New York, you know, working as a union organizer, I realized that, first off, I'm a big movie nut. Okay. And I've been writing stories, so to speak, in one form or fashion pretty much my whole life, since like the 4th grade, you know. And I'm a movie fanatic. I've seen, by the time I was, you know, graduated high school, I'd seen thousands and thousands of films, and I've, you know, seen thousands and thousands more since then. And so when I found myself living in New York, as somebody that just loves telling stories, I thought, maybe I need to learn how to write screenplays. I didn't know the first thing about it, didn't know anything about what a screenplay looked like on a page. And so the first thing I did was started a group in New York for screenplay writers. I called it a support group for screenwriters. And the whole purpose of it was to get people around me who had like-minded goals, and so that I could just kind of learn from them, kind of sponge off of them. Despite the fact, so I'm president of this club I know nothing about, if you can imagine that, and hoping that as president, the people who are coming to my group are going to teach me how to do what I'm supposed to be there, showing them how to do. But there's something I discovered very, very quickly when we started putting this group together. And before long, it was like the largest screenwriting group in all of New York. It had like 50 people would come to every meeting we had. And there's something that I learned along the way. There wasn't a whole lot I needed to learn about screenwriting as far as storytelling goes. I just didn't know what it looked like on the page. That's really all I needed to learn. So the formatting was it. And so once I realized that, I kind of focused on, first off, I focused on learning how to format a screenplay, which was simple, wasn't hard to do. I just bought some sources. I ended up writing a book on how to format screenplays.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that. You literally wrote a book on how to write screenplays?
And how to format screenplays. Because that was the one I figured there's got to be a lot of people out there like me who know how to tell a story. They just don't know how to format it. And so I was looking at all of these sources all over the place, and everybody telling you different ideas on how to format the same situation. And so I finally just said, you know what, I'm going to put it all into one book, all of these sources basically. And what I wanted to do was make it so that people like me can just get on with the storytelling and not have to worry about the formatting,
Cool.
And
it's
that's what all that is about.
And your book, it's available on Amazon as a paperback or on Kindle ebook. And the name of the book is Your Cut 2 is Showing.
Yes, that's the name of the book. But look, I didn't come here today to sell books.
Well,
right. So
I don't care, because you did write it and it is out there. And we found, actually, your producer David has found a little teaser about your book, and we're going to play it right now, whether you like it or not, DJ.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Here we go. Very cool. Very cool. That was incredible. And those who are listening on our podcast and can't see that, was a incredible commercial for author TJ Alex and his book, Your Cut 2 is Showing. It's available on Amazon and on Kindle ebook. And we're here with writer us TJ Alex right now, who's talking to us about his journey as a writer through the writer's process and journey. Yes, go ahead, TJ.
I know you wanted to plug that book, but let me tell people, if you can't afford the book, you can go to, and I'm sure David will put it online here, screenreads.com/formatting. That's the book. It's online for free. You don't have to buy it if you don't want to.
No,
what happened when I first decided I wanted to help people out with their formatting, I put together this website first, and then I started getting emails from people saying, this I would really love to be able to hold this website in my hands and read it as a book. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. So that's kind of how the book came about.
Well, we appreciate your availability for people and your authenticity as a teacher and a sharing. And I know your humility right now, because I know you're not trying to sell anything, but we just needed to get our audience that information, because it's very important. And if you're an aspiring screenwriter, you should want to pull from whatever you can, and you are providing an incredible resource for people there. But I will plug this, since I know you don't like us plugging your stuff. I will plug the fact that we did talk about Confessions of a Union Buster. And I'll circle back that is also available on Amazon. The re-release, the Activist edition, is on Amazon right now. So we want people to look up Confessions of a Union Buster, and they can see the source material for the film Confessions of a Union Buster that we are about to get into pre-production with Sherwood Players Productions very soon. Yes. But if people want to, and I know David's sharing a whole bunch of cool stuff with us right now, but I'm going to throw one last plug out before we move on with the conversation. Yes, that is irony. That's a great point. Confessions of a Union Buster on Amazon, who, as we know, Jeff Bezos and crew are basically very vocal about being anti-union. So how interesting that we're telling a story about what to look at. Let's just sum it up. Confessions of a Union Buster is literally about a guy saying, here are the horrible things I did as a union buster, made a ton of money doing it, and I ruined a lot of people's lives in the process. And I want to not just confess my sins, but I want to educate people about what to look for so they don't let it happen to them. Yes, how incredibly ironic that that's on Amazon right now, where they literally don't want their own workers to embody themselves with power and form any unions at all. It's interesting.
I want to talk a little more about those days back when I had my screenplay club. There's something I discovered very early on, is that I had a knack. Despite the fact I was just learning this craft myself, I had a knack for helping people tell stories. So even though I was kind of new to it, they could come to me with a screenplay or an outline for a screenplay or something, and I had this knack for telling them how they needed to move it around and make it a little bit better. Because even though I didn't understand, I was still trying to learn screenplays in general. I understood how stories are told, and whether it's a screenplay or a novel or whatever, structure is structure. No matter what the medium is, character development is character development. And so I realized that that's kind of where I needed to go. So I went about 20 years without really writing screenplays myself before I got involved with you and Confessions. I'd written a couple of things before that. But a lot of people, they'll write 20, 30 scripts and that just wasn't me. I would meet people in my group, and they had this big stack of screenplays that were unproduced. And I just didn't want to spend that much time writing something, this big stack of screenplays until I knew, not knowing if I'd ever see them made. And so since I knew I had a knack for that, that's where I went to for a long time. It's just helping people tell stories. I kind of developed, since this is talking about the process of writing, right? So I developed how, what I call the 3 pillars of screenwriting, which is structure, which is character development, and which is conflict. Those to me are the most important things whenever you're trying to put a piece of story together. You need to focus on those three areas.
It's so structure, character development, and what's the third one?
Conflict.
And conflict.
Yeah, and those are the things that I discovered along the way. I can teach people how to do those things. You can get a beat sheet and teach somebody the basics of structure. You can tell people strategies on how to develop characters, especially that main character. And then, you can teach people how to constantly keep the conflict ramping up and up as they go through the story. And speaking of character development, I discovered that, you see a lot of people, they really get into trying to figure out how to learning everything they can about their main character. You'll see them write up these really long, almost like job applications for their main character, trying to see everything about their lives, where they went to school, a bunch of stuff that no one's ever going to see in the story. And then I've seen people write these essays, really lengthy essays that go on for 10 pages about their main character and what they know about them and all this. But I discovered along the way what I call it the flawed approach to character development. That if you figure out what your character's flaw is, maybe they're shallow, maybe they suffer from depression, whatever it is. If you focus on their flaw and then you look into their past and see what caused their flaw, that's all you need to know. Everything about your character's past is in that moment when their flaw was created. Now, maybe it was a car crash that caused their depression because maybe their parents died in the car crash. Maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it could have been a singular moment. It could have been a moment that went on their entire childhood, abuse or something like that, physical abuse. But if you figure out once you know what their flaw is, if you figure out what caused it, and then that's where you focus your character development, is on that moment and how to solve it.
Now that makes a lot of sense, TJ. What would you say that, if you're trying to figure out, as the writer, the creator of these characters and the story, are you looking for an event, a life-changing event that is usually going to be referenced in the story itself, or is this something completely off the grid?
Well, it depends. It depends on the story. I mean, a lot of times, people overuse the flashback or whatever to try to get to that life-changing event that caused their flaw. But sometimes, every once in a while, you'll see these stories where it's there and it's just barely referenced at all, and you don't really get to see it play out on screen. Think about Good Will Hunting. You discover at the very end, all of his problems come from this physical abuse that he suffered as a child, and it's in those moments that at the climax when he's got that open folder and you're seeing the bruises. It's just very quick on screen. But then you take a movie like Chinatown, which is my personal all-time favorite movie, and is considered the greatest screenplay ever written. You take a movie like Chinatown, all you know is that whatever the main character, Jake Geddes, is suffering from, it happened in the past in Chinatown, and that there was a girl involved. That's all. And that's all you ever discover about it. And, and that was enough for it to be one of the greatest films ever made. So,
so going back to your previous example, so we're talking about Good Will Hunting, where if you're looking at the screenplay itself, would you see the child abuse mentioned in the character description when we're first introduced to Will Hunting? Or are we letting the reader of the screenplay discover it same way the movie audience is going to be discovering?
That's how I would write it. Yeah.
So you want your screenwriter, your reader, to go through the same experience that the audience, the viewer of the film, is going through, where you're not giving it all up front. So this is what you mean by when writers go too far with description, they're giving away that opportunity to have for the discovery from the reader, right? As a reader, you want to discover the same way you would watching the film on a big screen, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
But there's something else I want to mention. I don't know how much time we have left, but I talked about those 3 pillars of screenwriting and how I can teach that to people, right? And I can help them be better writers by teaching them those things. But over the years, I've discovered that there's kind of like this 4th pillar that's really hard to teach, and that's how you put emotion into your screenplay or into your story. And we talked about this the other day, just kind of in passing, and that it's not something I know how to tell people how to do. It's almost like this innate thing they have to have. Imagine, let's say you go see a movie, all right? You're sitting in the theater and say it's a comedy, and so you hear people laugh, at the funny moments, or it's a horror film, so people kind of jump in their seats when scary things happen. It's a drama, so when sad things happen, you hear the sniffles, people crying. Now, there's a lot of things going on screen that could be setting off those emotions in people. It could be the music that's playing. It could be the genius. It could be the genius of the actors. It could be the way the film is shot. There's so many different things, auditory, visual.
Things you're not going to see on the page if you're reading the screenplay. Yeah.
So here's the thing. When you're a good screenwriter, I despite all the stuff I could try to teach people, if it's how I react emotionally to what I'm reading. And that's where I discovered I was a good writer, a pretty darn good writer, is because, if you're just got, if you just have words on a page, black words on a white page, and you can emit those same things from the reader that the audience was seeing on screen, then that's when you've got what it takes, right? So if somebody is just reading a script and they laugh out loud, that's a good script. If I've had people, I've written scary stuff before, and I've had people tell me, man, I couldn't sleep last night. I didn't sleep at all because I couldn't get these images out of my head. Well, that's good. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And then the big one, I've had people, read my stuff and I look over at them and they're crying. That's something you can't teach. You just got to know how to pull that out of the audience, right, out of the reader. And once you can do that, that's the difference to me in being able to put your script in front of somebody and them saying, yeah, I want to make this movie. Because if they can feel what your characters are feeling as they're reading it, then it's almost money in the bank.
I think you're absolutely right, TJ. And I think that you can't really teach that, but you can maybe guide people like what we do from the, in Sherwood, we always say this, we have a rule, like never take on, if you're a director or any sort of somebody coming into to a project, like don't take something on if you don't believe in if you don't have something to say. And I think that's the best way, because I agree with you. It's really hard to teach that. How do you get people to emote from what the story you're telling? Just make sure that as you're trying to tell that story, as you go through the process of telling that story, don't even start that process if you don't have something you want to say, something that you believe in, that you're emoting from, right? So you feel something before TJ, you sit down and start on page 1, you have already emoted something. Your story about Confessions of a Union Buster earlier, I mean, that's the reason we spent so much time on that, is because it resonates so much. We're not trying to plug this movie. We haven't even made the movie yet. So it's not about that, but you took years. You said, I want to get my hands on this story. This is important to me. So when it was time to write that screenplay, we can't help but feel something on the other end when we're reading it. When I read Confessions, I said something important is happening here because you believed in it before you even started. And I have to add, that's why we have Randy Thoreau, a producer, on board with this movie right now. And I want to throw out to anybody listening right now, if you think that you're going to get anybody excited about your screenplay, that somebody potentially is going to help you make your screenplay into a film, you better hope that there's something memorable about it, because people like Randy, and there's so many people out there that get bombarded with screenplays all the time, and they have to read these things and go through them. What do you think is the one they're going to get excited about? It's the one where they wake up the next morning and they say, I'm still thinking about that. I'm still, and that's what Randy said to us. That's what I'm saying to you. We're still thinking about this, and we have to be part of telling it. And so that's the effect we want on our reader. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I saw this interesting quote from Sylvester Stallone recently, and he's a great writer himself.
Yeah, he is.
And he was talking about the writer and just the process that they go through and the world that they live in. Mm-hmm. And he said that when you're a writer, you'll find yourself just kind of standing alone in a corner mumbling, because you have all of these things happening in your head, and you just don't know how to get them out. And so, like when you're developing a character, when you're working on your screenplay, I tend to walk around the neighborhood and stuff, and I catch myself just talking to myself because I'm playing out these scenes in my head, and that's when you know that you can really get into your characters, because you're acting those places, you're putting yourself in their shoes, and you're saying their words, and you feel what they feel.
I love that. You're becoming these characters before you're figuring out who they are before you put them on the page. That is so. Here's a question we had from one of our viewers, and I know I'm thinking the same thing. And anybody that's watching this wants to get started writing. Well, here it is from David. Thanks for posting this question. I've written a lot, but feel daunted by tackling an entire screenplay. How would you suggest people get started? Is there a method or format you like?
Well, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but whenever I'm starting a new story, the first thing I do is break out the old-fashioned beat sheet, which just has all of your beats kind of lined out. And I have my own personal version that I've created over the years, and I can share that with you guys to put up on your website or whatever you want to.
Absolutely. But
yeah. My beat sheet contains a beat that's usually not in most beat sheets, in that I have a beat for that moment in time that created their flaw. So I put that into my beat sheet because it's that important, and so I really kind of sit down. I take a few days to just go through a simple beat sheet, get my act breaks where they need to be, figure out what my catalyst is going to be, what my midpoint is going to be. And once you have that, and I should also say, 90% of the time when I start a story, I know how I want it to end before I get started. And so that's the first beat I can usually fill out, is what the climax is going to look like. Then I usually know what my hero's world is before the catalyst begins, right? And so since I know all of that, once that catalyst happens, and I usually know what that's going to be, then it's just creating that path to the climax,
So you're almost reverse engineering the process of the storytelling process. You're saying this is the end point, and let's look backwards from
you just
there.
Kind of got to know where you're going. And don't get me wrong, there's been many times where that end point has changed, because as I'm writing, I realize, well, that maybe that ending isn't going to work as well as I thought, so I have to change it. But I usually have a goal to get to, as your hero does. Your hero's got a goal, so you got to give him that goal. And I think it was in Blake Snyder's book, Save the Cat. He talks about how the middle is always the hardest to write, and it is. I always know how I want it to end. I always know how I want it to begin, and it's really just about that 50%.
Act 2, baby. Act 2.
Act 2 is where the money is, but it's also where you got to put in the most time.
Yeah.
And once I have that basic beat sheet, I might spend some time kind of going over it in my head, making sure this is what I want to do. But then I just start with Act 1, and I start going scene to scene. How will I get to my first act break? Play with that for a while, and then I take out Act 2, Part 1, and I do the same thing, and I break it into these 4 parts, and I just go piece by piece. There's a lot of people that they just want to start writing. They just sit down and just start typing, And I can, as somebody that's taught a lot of this stuff and somebody that's read a lot of screenplays to help people, I used to do, people used to pay me to help make their screenplays better and stuff. As somebody that's done a lot of that, you can tell when they just kind of sit down and start typing because it's the flow just isn't there.
Right.
Like it needs to be. And I tell people all the time, you can do that if you want. Oh, hear that? Here, you hear my cat in the background? Yeah, I got this old cat. He goes crazy. So you can do that if you want to, but that means you're going to spend a lot more time in the end trying to figure out how to rewrite this screenplay to make it into a real good, solid screenplay that's structurally sound with your character development in place, with all that conflict we talked about. If you do all of that work up front, you'll find that you have your finished rough draft is actually pretty darn good, and it doesn't need nearly as much work as most other people's will. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you're really having to put that foundation together, or it's like building a house without the bottom layer. Like you got to spend time on that. You can't just put the bricks on top of each other.
Probably the most famous pantser of all time, as they call it. Somebody just sits down and starts typing is Stephen King. He's very famously just sits down and starts typing and lets it go where it may. And that's great. But then one time I read where he was, in talks with his editor and he was on the 14th draft. And I'm like, oh my God. I would not want to be on a 14th draft of anything. I get to about the third or fourth draft, I'm ready to move on to the next story. But
if you if you go up to 14, something might be wrong. You might want to reconsider the story you're actually trying to tell.
Yeah, but I'm not going to argue with Stephen King.
You can't.
But that's it. People do have their own different approaches. I just try to tell people as much as possible, put as much work in on the front end, and then you won't spend as much time on the back end, and you can move on to that next project. The idea is to finish one thing, move on to the next one.
Love it.
And when you do it all correctly, you should be able to hammer out a screenplay in 4 weeks to 2 months. It shouldn't take that long.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, TJ Alex, for being on the show with us today. It's TJ Alex, the author of Your Cut 2 is Showing and screenwriter of the upcoming film with Sherwood Players, Confessions of a Union Buster. Yes, go ahead.
Just real quick, there's if somebody is looking for a source other than just formatting, there's a book by a guy named Bob Sands, Saenz. He's kind of this just kind of getting started as far as he's got a book out now. I mean, he's been writing for a long time, has tons and tons of credits. His stuff is really good. You can find him online. He's somebody you can really listen to. He gives a lot of insight. Like when he has a discussion with his director or something of a film that's coming out, he gets online and he talks about that discussion and how it went. It's really good to follow him if you get a chance on Facebook.
Good to know. Well noted.
Saenz.
Okay, we'll have David. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Thanks for that.
I can't remember the name of his book. I'd have plugged that too. I don't even know the guy, but I think I've come to realize he has a lot of good insight.
Excellent. Thanks for the heads up on that. And again, we've been talking with TJ Alex, author of a book called Your Cut 2 is Showing. And we have Confessions of a Union Buster. TJ is the screenwriter of that film that we are putting into pre-production soon with Sherwood Players Productions. Thanks for being on the show with us, TJ. And how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
Well, they can find me on Facebook. I think David could probably put the Facebook link on here somewhere. And then my email is tjalex01@gmail.com. I really like help. Yeah, I like helping people when they're first trying to develop their screenplays. So, reach out to me. Maybe I've got the time.
There it is. Thanks again, TJ, and we'll check in with you next time. Thanks for being on the show with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay. Bye.
Bye.